Association of Palestinian Anthropology. I have learned an incredible lesson this week because before the 7th of October, we were starting to prepare the next conference call. And after the 7th of October, we all appeared online, some of us, and I was one of those who thought we can't really go ahead with the plan. It's really difficult for me to even imagine a conference. It's difficult to even thinking about the call, analyzing, putting together words in a paper, and envisioning anything. And then the Palestinians in Palestine, they stopped me immediately and said, there is no if, we continue. We always do this. We don't think ever in terms of what this violence is going to do to us. There is always an after, there is always a future. And it taught me an incredible lesson of, not just of resilience, which is a word that we don't like that much because it's been so much kind of used to depoliticize Palestinians, but of what Native American intellectual and political figure Gerald Wiesenor calls survivance, the kind of intertwining of survival and resistance, which I think is really in his work means the ability of remaining present, and the political meaning of this remaining present is immense. But being present doesn't just mean surviving. It carries with it an extraordinary amount of resistance, which Mesna and Mark talked about, which I want to give you an example of. First of all, as Mark said at the very beginning, and I love that, Gaza is very beautiful. It's not just beautiful as a landscape. I've been a long time ago. But it's beautiful in the sense that it's extraordinary how it has been able to produce an incredible artistic, creative scene of people who think politically, who are incredibly critical towards the systems, the regimes, whichever these regimes are, who have produced some of the most amazing work of art, who have produced some of the most amazing cinema. People who studied, not abroad, studied in the University Al-Azhar, cinema studies. There has been something that I think it's really about survivance. It's this ability to keep not just existing but thinking, which is despite all odds. And this takes me to two last very small points. One is, I love when Mahmoud Darwish, famous Palestinian poet, says that he thinks of Palestine as a metaphor. He's been thinking about Palestine as a metaphor. He was thinking Palestine as a metaphor for a long time. We can take this idea of metaphor to mean many different things, but his own meaning was that actually we don't return to the land because we never left it. We arrived, we never left it because Palestine, because we have been able to name the past, we have been able to never leave it in our writing, in his poetry, not mine, obviously, and in this extraordinary amount of archives. So I really think that this idea that we don't return is because we never left, we survive, is extraordinary. And to finish, I would like to point out, reminding ourselves and looking on the point of how globalized is the struggle for Palestine, for free Palestine. The baby that was born at the Standing Rock protest site against the Dakota pipelines, another indigenous native people fighting against the metrics or the multi-layered system of dispossession and accumulation and erasure in Standing Rock was wrapped in the Palestinian kufiyya, along with the Native American cloth. And I think this is a really important kind of signifier of how the struggle for a free Palestine intertwines and intersects with other struggles around the world. And I think in these demonstrations we have a deep, new sense, visible, affective sense of how true this is in these demonstrations in the last few years. So, thank you.
So my question is very much related to the role of academia in this global struggle for Palestine, which is the global struggle for freedom, equality, and justice for all. So we know that there was this petition signed by 600 academics here in Bologna, but today, when the students went to the academic senate to submit a resolution based on this petition with the request about ceasefire, about humanitarian aid and protection for Palestinians, the Senate refused to approve this motion. So my question is now what you're going to do as academics in front of this situation. I think this is very much expected. I mean, this reaction by the university, because the university has very much strong collaborations with Israeli institutions, academic institutions, and research institutions. So we know that a lot of money goes to these Israeli entities through the Horizon program, in which the University of Bologna is very much involved and collaborating with all these institutions. And so there is an issue here about complicity. And I would like to read something from Tana Reinhardt, who was an Israeli academic. He's passed away in 2007. And even before the academic boycott campaign was launched, in 2002, she wrote the following: "In extreme situation of violation of human rights and moral principles, the academia refuses to criticize and take a side. It collaborates with the oppressing system." So I think there is very much to do in order to cut all these ties with all these Israeli institutions who are very much complicit with the system of oppression, which is ongoing now in such huge scale in Gaza these days.
Thank you. We can collect a couple of questions more, so don't be shy.
Anche in italiano,
Sì,
anche in italiano.
yes. You can start elaborating your answers and more questions will come, sure. Maybe Ruben and Sandro.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, obviously. There is no secret that I think that at this point, personally, adopting forms of pressure that, or forms of struggle that put pressure on academic institutions in Israel and elsewhere to insist that until international law and the end of the occupation is not implemented, we cannot collaborate with institutions that are complicit is a very important step forward. Personally, I think this is a very important forms of struggle, and I'm obviously it takes really one aback to think that this peaceful means of achieving or putting pressure can be equated with a violent tool. It takes a lot of imagination to equate this to some kind of attempt to be anti-Israeli or anti-Semitic or anti-this or the other. It's a peaceful tool to try and put pressure on and to point the finger to the kind of complicities that exist. However, for experience, we know that this requires a long groundwork it's not an easy task, and there are a lot of people who get very anxious about the notion of boycott, which is understandable. It's a very difficult position to endorse. It takes time to familiarize a lot of people with the idea that boycotting an institution doesn't mean cutting relationships with individuals. On the contrary, it means sometimes increasing these relationships. However, we have not asked in our petition to endorse the BDS in the University of Bologna because we think that there is a much more cogent, at this moment, while we are witnessing, a genocide unfolding in front of our eyes, there is a much more urgent need to ask for a ceasefire, not a truce, but a permanent ceasefire to save lives. And this has come from the people of Gaza and Palestine. We think that this is a time to save lives. People want to live. And contrary to the mainstream demonization of Palestinians as death lovers, or even their own death, people want to live. And at the moment we thought that this was the most important and prominent aim to achieve. And we haven't even discussed it, but on a personal level, and I'm replying here on a personal level, I agree that this is something that has to be done, and there are a lot of collectives of students who are already engaging and have been. I'm quite new to Bologna, I've just returned from the UK, but I was very impressed by a lot of group of students that I met over the past few weeks who have been doing this groundwork of teasing out these relationships, economic relationships, these parallels or this intersection between systems of knowledge production and systems of military and war machines. And they exist, and they are, students are at the forefront of doing this. How will we convince the Senate to do something? We will not stop here, but it requires a lot of work, years of work, and so that's what I would like to answer.
Did the Senate vote against it, or they wouldn't even allow a vote?
No, they wouldn't allow a vote.
So they wouldn't even allow the vote to happen, because I presume if 600 academics at Univo voted, signed the petition.
Academics and administrative.
Still, they wouldn't even allow the vote to happen. Yeah, I would say I was one of the first U.S. signers of BDS back in 2003, and so I've always supported it. But I also think BDS in a way, is far too narrow because Israel is part of a larger system. You mentioned Horizon. So most of the academics who will not, will personally boycott Israeli institutions, which I do as I boycott Russian state institutions or Chinese state institutions or Indian state institutions, any oppressive state institution. But are they going to also not take Horizon grants as long as Horizon is cooperating with Israel? Because that would be the next step. Easy to say, but if your whole life as an academic depends on getting funding, so you can go and do the research, and you're going to turn down the only major research grant there is, then what? So the system is so large, it's, I think, while everyone should be supporting BDS, it also has to be explained and expanded to a much more systemic level, because that's the problem in the US especially, that is basically destroying academia, the way they've made it so intricately related that you almost can't fight the system. Oh, you want to boycott Israel? Well, what about this, and this? Are you going to boycott all this and then you have no money and then you can't do anything, then you don't get promoted or you don't get tenure? So there has to be a much more large-scale attack at a systemic level than just saying BDS, which is in a way the most obvious, the simplest thing, but it's not, it can't stop there, and in some ways it can't start only there. It has to be a fuller analysis at least, if not an action.
I'm not in Italy. I don't know the Italian educational system, but I want
You are
to...
now.
No, I am, yeah, sorry, I am now in Italy. But perhaps I can offer some notes from the experience in the UK and in Cambridge. One is, the worrying thing here isn't necessarily the academics. The worrying thing here is the prevention of a vote, which means that this is an academic institution that has decided what and what not students can talk about and vote upon and work politically around. That is an enormous amount of heavy-handedness in relationship to student politics that should be rejected at large, about Palestine or anything else. That intervention in student politics should be rejected on the grounds of freedom of speech, which perhaps right-wingers have decided to take up as their mantra, but is absolutely something that must be defended and protected, in particular amongst the most precarious in some ways, but the most powerful part of an institution, which is its students. So, I mean, you know, going back to the university and being like, this is reputational, have some dignity as a university. What are you but a place that is meant to protect intellectual inquiry and freedom of speech? There is no such thing as an institution of higher education that is worthy of the name if it does not honor and respect that very fundamental freedom for its students, its faculty, and its staff. And should that freedom be exercised through a vote, then so be it. Now, as to what the particular parameters of whatever vote is, and the discussion around procedure and whatnot, fine. But that principle must be defended. There should be a thick moat between the university as an institution of higher education and all of these outside political forces that aim to intervene in that institution's calling and purpose. And so that really has to be central to any political organizing and campaigning. This is something that we have had to struggle for and remind the University of Cambridge and every university that most Palestinians are organizing within, and Palestine organizers are doing it. That is there is no way to disaggregate this struggle for speech from the struggle for Palestine, and we're seeing this now expanding. There was this moment in 2021 where we all were hoping that the tide has shifted, that people are able to talk about Palestine now. Palestine has gone mainstream, and in many powerful ways it has. But the contraction of speech on Palestine at universities is, in a way, a canary in a coal mine. If it is not stopped at the university level, it will expand dramatically throughout society. And then every single citizen in Italy will have to pay the cost of this initial violation of freedom of speech. It starts with the university, and then it grows through every single institution in Italy. So you are at the forefront of a defense where Palestine is at its center, but it is fundamentally a freedom that you must insist on as a citizen of this country.
Any other questions or domande in italiano? It's almost
Thank you, everyone. It was really powerful. And as I was listening to you, I've been thinking a lot of the work of Larissa Stansura, and especially the documentary, the short film she made. They used to hate from porcelains that, until 5 years ago seemed dystopic, and now seems dramatically history. And I've been thinking of all the efforts that Palestinians, Ruba was talking about Palestinian filmmakers, and the effort they've been making over the years to bring into our to our emotions and to our intellect, the reality, and how important it is to know more about them. Mohammed Bakr, 𝐏𝐚𝐥𝐞𝐬𝐭, when we saw 𝐏𝐚𝐥𝐞𝐬𝐭, we were thinking never again, and we are there again. Yeah, so that's untenable. But my question was about another thing. There was a time when, asking for peace was revolutionary. The biggest movement against war, was the movement, to my knowledge, against the war in Vietnam, and it was revolutionary. And, people were chanting, give peace a chance. Today, I couldn't help myself, as I was helping a colleague to write a statement, to write the word peace. We demand peace. And I was telling her, maybe we should say, we demand justice. Because my feeling is that at the moment there can't be peace without justice. But I wanted your advice about that, because I am really conflicted. And I think, the word peace also after 2 years of war in Ukraine and all the debate that has been about Ukraine has shifted and changed. So I wanted your, opinion about that and your thoughts. Thank you.
Lucia, this is a wonderful question. In fact, I think peace has become a sort of mockery, in the context of Palestine. Even Netanyahu uses the word peace. The other day I was interviewed by a radio who said, well, now obviously we are, realistically there should be a possible peace. What is a possible peace? It's basically the continuation of colonization of Palestine, because already attaching to peace the notion of possible and of compromise means that it means demanding that the Palestinians accept the hierarchy of power that exists on the ground. So I said no. I said exactly what you said. There is no possible peace. There is only just peace.